Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out True Off My Chest. Story 1. I was born sick. 19 just got in college, and even before first sem is over I have almost given up on my future. It's like a repeat of what has happened during my senior year exams. I have always wondered, why does it feel like I have always been told to do stuff and never wanted to do things in my entire life? My dad was a overachiever during his time, bachelor's and master's in MECH, and my mom has degrees in arts and crafts and psychology. As you can see, both of them are well educated and successful in life. But, I, on the other hand, am a diagnosed mentally ill person, who has become a proper drug addict and indulge in self-harm quite often. I'm not normal. When I was 15, I realized I might be bisexual, and there was this really cute-looking guy in my class and I kinda liked him. I told this to my best friend, at the time, and didn't realize if this discloses bad things might happen. And things did happen. Word got out and I started getting stares. And Story 2. Old lady got extremely pissed over me paying for a mom's baby formula. I'm 16 and work as a cashier for a grocery store. I've seen all kinda of depressing shit in my time working there, but this has to top it. Last night a woman who didn't look older than 20 came in my line with a can of baby formula. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, hadn't showered in days, or even had time to properly care for herself. She just looked so worn out. I rung up the formula and it was like $40. She put her card in and it wasn't going through. So I went through this process that I can do to see if she had any money on her card, and she only had a few bucks. When I looked at her after saying that she looked like she was about to burst out crying, I felt so sad and I understood what she was going through. My BSF was R-worded and got pregnant at 15, and I've been buying formula so she doesn't have to worry about my nephew going hungry. I told her it's fine, I got it and paid for it, and she tearfully thanked me and left. The person next in line came up, which was a older lady. I asked her how her day was, something I kinda have to do, and she started complaining about how new moms nowadays have so much help from people, how if people like me wanna help sluts that can't keep their legs closed I'm causing more and bigger issues, and then out of nowhere started screaming at me. She got kicked out and I'm still in shock, like, why would you want a fucking baby to go hungry? Like, you seriously have to be that low of a person to complain that someone else is helping out a mom buy food for her child. Story 3. I too have a stalker, but no one is taking it seriously. It's been a few months now. Enough for me to know for sure she is stalking me. The thing is, I have no idea where I first met this woman, or how she knows me. She seems to be in her mid-late 30s. I've gotten phone calls where I think she is calling me from one of those websites that lets you make calls. When I answer, she doesn't say anything. I've blocked a few of those numbers. I work as a firefighter. Sometimes we deal with psychiatric/mental health related calls. It's just a guess. But I may have encountered her during one of them. Recently I was in a car accident. Someone slammed into me at an intersection. They were at fault. I remember when it happened, I was a little bit out of it. It was very late at night, and very cold. When I got out, I saw a car with a woman coming out of it. In that moment I assumed that was the car that hit me. This woman approached me and hugged me. I was dazed and bleeding, minor cuts, I just let it happen. I asked her if she was okay. When I broke off the hug to look down at her, she said she was fine, that she only stopped to help. I realized, okay, this wasn't the person who hit me. I looked around and saw the other car. I went over and helped the driver. It was a middle-aged guy. He was fine and already making a call for services. This woman kept getting in my face, distracting me from processing the scene. She told me she called the police and was told ambulances are overwhelmed right now. The wait times will be very long. She was encouraging me to get into her car and offering to take me to hospital. By this time police pulled up and I went over to them. They asked me a few questions, then asked me if I have a ride. This woman was very intrusive and kept telling the police she will take me to the hospital. They had no idea who she was and assumed she knew me. She was clinging onto my arm, which ended up being fractured. It is now in a sling. Fortunately the ambulance showed up around the same time. I was transferred via ambulance. I am constantly on the lookout for this woman now. I have told the police about it, but they don't care. I get it. I don't have much information. But after this incident, I feel disturbed. I wonder if she knows where I live. I'm not the kind of man to express my concerns to others. I keep everything in. It's why I'm sharing it here. Just to get the thoughts out. So I can sleep. Story 4. I suspect my wife has cheated maybe multiple times. M46F43 married for 8 YRS, blended family, 2 of our own. Very rough start and I tried to end things with her constantly early in the relationship. She was getting kicked out of where she was living so I let her move in with me very early on. Maybe 4 months into the relationship. I've said things I don't mean, she's said some horrible things but for the most part after about the 4th year we've been settled and supporting one another. Mostly. I'll try to summarize as best I can chronologically. After we were married she got flowers delivered to our house anonymously. She claimed to not know where they were from. Her boss, married with kids, moved out of state, with the company, so she had to travel for trade shows and for meetings. She goes out of town and is out super late and never calls me. Like ignored my texts and calls. A few months later and her boss is in town interviewing someone and my wife meets them out. We have a sitter and I had a work event I told her about where I cannot be home to get the baby. She goes out with her boss and I'm assuming the person they are interviewing. She comes home late, I'm asleep on the couch with the baby after having to leave my work event. She wakes me up and I'm pissed. I call her names, she calls me names and then she literally punches me in the face when I'm holding the baby. I call the police and leave the house. She deletes our baby cam footage of her punching me. When I come home she's there in her car with the baby and her boss is there in his truck. She blames me for the whole episode and said she had her boss there to help get her out of the situation. There is a selfie she sent me when she's at the pool and I can see a guy in the reflection in her glasses near her feet at the pool. Somehow we don't divorce. Several years into the future she always leaves the room when she's on the phone. She says it is because the kids are loud. There are times the kids aren't even in that same space. COVID hits we are both working from home. She constantly leaves to work quietly at coffee shop. She tell me she is thinking about divorce. Because we are both so unhappy. Which we were. A few days later I see a text on her Apple Watch from her boss where she is apologizing for jumping off the phone quickly because I came home. The next text is her boss I adore you. I confront her. She promises it's nothing. He's just a good friend. Swears it on everything she holds dear. A year later I find a text where she joked about showing up at his doorstep because she was mailing something for work to him and he said he wished and she said she did too. Almost a year ago. She swears again him reading into shit. Still together. Doing okay. But there is a big part of me that believes she has cheated is cheating. Not sure I can be happy in this relationship with these doubts. Input appreciated. I'm pretty miserable. Story 5. Stop asking couples when they plan on having children. Please for the love of God stop asking people this question. It's no one's business. What if they don't want kids? What if they're trying and struggling? What if they are expecting and aren't ready to share it yet? What if they just miscarried? I swear if someone asks me this question one more time I'll lose it. I just lost my baby and I cannot handle one more nosy person asking about when my husband plans on blowing his load inside of me. Please consider that someone might be struggling before you ask such a personal question. Story 6. When I was homeless and living in my car I once ate a sandwich that I found in a trash can. It sounds disgusting and is way worse in real life but when you are really hungry and haven't eaten in days, standards barely exist. I felt very pathetic for getting excited over someone's half-eaten sandwich. I got really emotional when I ate my first fresh and warm meal that I prepared and cooked myself in my new apartment. It was the best meal I've ever had in my whole life. Story 7. My ex-friends are moving on like I never existed. Felt like venting about this into the void. Not really looking for advice, but I believe writing about your emotions helps out a lot. And as you may have guessed, I don't exactly have friends to share these thoughts with. Years ago, I was sexually assaulted. My entire friend group supported me when I first came to them with my story. I then found out that a mutual friend, who I'll call Chris, in the group was close friends with my rapist. I assumed that Chris ended his friendship with the man, especially because Chris said he believed me. He also helped me get in contact with my rapist's girlfriend to warn her. I thought of him as a good person. Last year, I found out that Chris still considers my rapist a close friend, and still actively spends time with him. Chris told me about this himself. It was offensive and beyond shocking. First, I privately messaged my closest friends about this, and they claimed they had no idea that Chris was still friends with him. They were undecided on what their next course of action should be. When I shared my feelings with the rest of the group, most of them ignored those messages. The few who responded either wanted to find some middle ground where neither Chris or myself would have to leave the friend group, or stated that they did not want to cut ties with Chris because they were close friends. I took the silence either as implied support for Chris to stay in the group, or a desire to sweep everything under the rug. I was shocked at the indifference. It wasn't a small issue to me. I thought it was serious and distressing, and needed to be addressed in some way as a group. Although, I suppose their silence indicated what their choice was. While I understood I had no right to demand my friends to do anything, I was secretly hoping they'd stop being friends with Chris. I thought that cutting ties or minimizing contact with Chris would show that they empathized with my feelings. Like, what the hell, Chris? You shouldn't be friends with someone's rapist. What's wrong with you? Unless you are a victim yourself, I don't know if you can understand how violating and disgusting it feels when someone who claimed to believe your experience remained friends with the person who did it. Or am I just crazy? Is that really something that you can easily overlook when choosing who to remain friends with? I felt everyone chose Chris over me, and I went no contact with all of them earlier this year in January. I recently went back into our Discord group chats to retrieve some files I sent there, and I scrolled through their most recent messages, though maybe I shouldn't have. They acted like what happened in January never happened. Not even a mention of wondering how I was doing. Just messages after messages about what each of them were up to, and planning various hangouts together. It was like I was erased and was never friends with them to begin with. I did not leave that Discord server or block anyone because I was secretly hoping that my assumptions about my former friends were wrong. That maybe, they did regret supporting Chris, and just made a hasty decision that day based on emotions. That maybe one day, they might even reach out to apologize. Or to ask how I've been doing. None of that has happened to this day. I was the one who broke contact first and messaged one of my former close friends that I was alive and okay. I didn't want to believe they were this callous and unsympathetic, but I guess I was wrong. There was an even darker assumption, that perhaps my friends never actually believed I was assaulted. Chris for certain never believed me and lied about it. That wasn't the hardest realization. The hardest part was realizing that people I've known since middle school would show me so much love and support when it first happened, then just change their minds about it years later. As a group, they chose to support Chris and his decision to stay friends with the rapist. Maybe support is a stretch, but clearly, that detail didn't bother them. I understand it was such an irreparable issue that I made the right choice to leave, but I admit it does deeply affect me. Aside from my boyfriend and one friend who lives across the country, I have no social group anymore. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.